All right, so I have been a Spider-Man fan my entire life. For as long as I remember, I have loved this character. And recently, playing Spider-Man 2, it was such an incredible game that it's gotten me really hyped about Spider-Man just in general. And then, of course, the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse coming out and all that stuff, it's just got me hyped. And the thing is, whenever I play a Spider-Man game, especially Insomniacs, I'm just reminded of some of the great games we've had over the years. But there's one game to me that's always stood out and has stood above the crowd. And it's a game that I played when I was incredibly young. That I remember that this was one of the first games I ever played in my life. I would play it on my parents' PC at home. I'm not even sure who bought it for me, but it's where a lot of the love for Spider-Man as a character that I have has come from. And so I really have a lot of a nostalgia for this game. And so I know that I can have that nostalgia bias, but I still, even after playing Spider-Man 2, feel like this is one of the best, if not potentially even the best, Spider-Man game of all time. And that game, of course, is Spider-Man 2001. It was on PC, it was on PlayStation, the original, and it was on the Nintendo 64. And it was really an incredible experience, especially at a time where superhero video games were not very good. This one stood above the crowd. And again, it's one of the things that really shaped me into being a Spider-Man fan. And so I kind of wanted just to share with you guys, because I know that some of you weren't even alive when this game came out. Others of you remember this game. And I want to share some of the reasons why I love this game so much and why I think it's one of the greatest Spider-Man games of all time. It's pretty much Insomniac Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, and then this game for me that are all kind of like the greatest Spider-Man games of all time. And so I want to share some of my thoughts and feelings toward this game with you to either give you some nostalgia or maybe give you like an inclination to go and check this game out, because it's incredibly underrated and it's one of those like forgotten gems that is genuinely really incredible. So first off, one of the main reasons I think I love this game so much is the story. And it is a classic comic book story that if you play this game, it is like you're reading those classic Spider-Man comic books, that they really made the Spider-Man world come to life in a way that personally I don't think any other game has. I love Insomniac's story, but it feels like Insomniac's take on Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Just like how there's different Spider-Man movies and it's like this director's take on Spider-Man. Insomniac feels like that, where it's incredible. It's an incredible story, but it's Insomniac Spider-Man. This Spider-Man in this story feels like you're in the comic book, like you're reading the Amazing Spider-Man comic book, and it is incredible. And any game that starts off with a narration from Stan Lee, that's how you know you're in for something special, that you're in for a really comic book accurate classic Spider-Man story. And this whole story is just a ton of fun, and it brings in almost everything that I love about Spider-Man, from the characters to the settings to the familiar faces, to the environments, to the quips, to the dialogue. There's so much to love here, and there's so much in this story that is so good. And it's a campy, fun story that you're not supposed to take too seriously, but is actually really well done. And my favorite part of this entire story has to be Venom. And I think this game is one of the reasons why, as a kid, Venom became my favorite Spider-Man villain, is that they do him so well here, and this Venom is still to this day my favorite version of Venom. That seeing him kind of take on Spider-Man and ruin his life and kidnap Mary Jane and go through all these different things, and then eventually him having to team up with Spider-Man because Carnage shows up, is just brilliant writing. And how Eddie and Venom tease Spider-Man and really make fun of him, and honestly have some hilarious lines where there's some things Venom says in this game that are actually genuinely hilarious. That the villains and just Spider-Man himself and all of the supporting cast, how they craft this story and the tale they tell and how they weave in so many elements from Spider-Man's lore is really incredible. And it's honestly something that I think that if you haven't enjoyed already, that you should go out and enjoy. Even just watch the cutscenes. That it's just one of those things that if you're a Spider-Man fan will just make your heart happy, despite all of the like bad animations, because it's old and because this thing came out in 2001 when we were just developing voice acting and cutscenes in video games. It's still an incredibly brilliant story that I still love to this day. Then on top of that, I actually still genuinely love the gameplay, and this game laid a foundation that all the games after it built on, some better than others. And now, of course, it's from 2001, so the gameplay has aged, but it isn't bad. That it's not unplayable and it doesn't feel super stiff. That there is the essential learning curve of being like, okay, like I'm not as flowy as I would be in a modern day game, but really quickly you can figure out how to play this thing and how to play it well. And I think that's because they kept things really simple. You can web people, you can punch people, you can kick people, and there's some stealth elements even in that. And because they kept the gameplay so simple and kept it so fun, that it really is still a joy to go back to. That I don't find myself being like, oh no, like there are some games that have aged so poorly that are really hard to go back to. The original Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo is hard to play, where gaming has just come so far that it is so difficult to pick that game up and play it again. But this one isn't one of those things. There's a little learning curve, but then you're diving straight into it. And even the variety of different things that they have in here, whether it's different suits, which yes, this game is the originator of you being able to put on different suits and play in different suits as Spider-Man, that this game actually innovated so much and is responsible for so many of the things that we love and enjoy today in those Insomniac Spider-Man games. But on top of that too, all the different web abilities that they included are actually really impressive for a game of this time. Whether it's the punching gloves, whether it's the web dome, whether it's shooting like massive, whatever you call those things, I forget what he calls them, but the big web shots where it's like the punching bag essentially being thrown at someone, that they have all these different webbings. And then also you can get like the fire webbing to fight the symbiotes. Like it's so interesting and so cool, and they're able to put in so much diversity in such a limited game that it genuinely is a ton of fun. And on top of that, so many varieties of levels. Every single level is different than the last, and it doesn't feel like you're just playing the same thing over and over again. That every level has its own unique setting, it's got its own unique enemies to fight, it's got its own unique puzzles and things that you have to figure out or go through, and it's incredibly refreshing, especially in a day and age when a lot of games are copy-paste and there's not a lot of variety in the gameplay. This game, every level is a different game essentially, and that makes it a ton of fun and makes it really enjoyable. And so just overall, the gameplay and the world and how they crafted this gameplay is a ton of fun, and it's still fun to go back to. But the last thing for me that makes this game incredible has to be the characters. And this is like the biggest part. That if you play this game and this is your only knowledge of Spider-Man, you'll actually have a really great grasp on the characters and who he is himself. That Spider-Man is all about the things that Spider-Man should be about. That it's clear that he's got this great responsibility and great power that he feels. That he has this deep care for others, and that he cares about Mary Jane, he cares about Black Cat, he cares about Daredevil, he cares about the Human Torch, and even he cares about people like Eddie, where he tries to help his villains and help them be able to get over their kind of evil selves. And even someone like JJ, where he shows up to save him and Scorpion's trying to kill him, and he's throwing out quips, but he genuinely wants to help people. And the whole world is out to get him, which is a classic Spider-Man thing that people have forgotten, that the whole world is actually supposed to hate Spider-Man for the most part. Not just JJ, but actually a lot of people are supposed to look down on him. And that happens here, that he kind of gets framed and the whole world is coming after him and nobody trusts him, and there's only a few people. And even Daredevil at one point doesn't even trust him until he asks him, pretty much interrogates him and sees whether he's lying or not. And it's just really cool to see that they got the Spider-Man character so right in this game, and that it's just really fun to be able to see him interact and the different things he says and the story. But it wasn't just Spider-Man. He's not the only character. The entire rogues gallery that they throw in here is done incredibly well, and they all have their time to shine. Whether it's Mysterio, who has one of the best jokes, in my opinion, in the game at the end when you kind of see that in prison he's got like a girl poster in his prison cell, but he's put a fishbowl over her. It's just like stuff like that is so funny. Or Scorpion, who's able to have this like great moment with J. Jonah Jameson where he's going after him for making him be stuck in this suit, which is a classic Spider-Man storyline. Or the Lizard, where you show up into the sewers and you've got all these lizard people running around and you kind of run into the lizard and you have this short interaction with him that's easy to skip, that you could totally miss, but if you find it is so memorable. And again, like I said, Venom, my favorite incarnation of this character, is in this game. That Venom is done so well here and is so entertaining, and he's so funny but also menacing, that he's great. And Carnage is terrifying, that when you figure out that Carnage is behind all of this and you have to fight him, I remember as a kid being so scared. And of course, Black Cat has done really well. Doc Ock, how could you forget about Doc Ock? They do such a good job. And of course, you know, this guy's not reformed at the beginning of the game. You're like, Doc Ock is up to his old tricks. And so they do his character insanely well, and they even get the animated series voice actor in here, which is a ton of fun to see. And then the most terrifying character, and the one that everyone's talking about for Spider-Man 3 that they hope to see, is Monster Ock. That is still, to this day, hearing him scream and all the different things still brings chills to my bones, where I've got trauma from playing that as a kid. But just in general, all of the characters and all the different things that they decided to include were done so incredibly well, were written so wonderfully and faithfully. And even when you listen to the creators of this game talk about this game and reminisce, that was the thing they set out to do, that they wanted to create a Spider-Man game that was faithful to the comic books, that would give people an introduction to who Spider-Man is, and if a kid is playing it for the first time, that they would be able to understand the character that Stan Lee made, and that it would be authentic to the amazing Spider-Man comic books. And I think that's why, for me, even though I have nostalgia for it, that this game still holds that special place in my heart that a lot of Spider-Man games don't, is because it's still that game that brings me back to feeling like I'm just reading a Stan Lee comic book and I'm sitting down and watching this story play out and being able to engage with these characters I grew up with. And it's a ton of fun, and it's a great entry point, in my opinion, for anybody. And if you're a Spider-Man fan and you haven't played it, you are missing out. That this is one of the hidden gems. This is one of the greatest Spider-Man games of all time. And it's really a game that set the precedent for every game after it. That Insomniac owes so much to this game. And it's just really cool to see. I'm glad it stood the test of time. Even though it's a little janky from being a 2001 game, it's still really fun to play through, and it's worth your time. I think it holds up. But I want to know what you guys think. Have you ever heard of this game before? Have you ever seen it? Are you maybe interested in playing it now and you weren't before? Do you remember this game from your childhood and have nostalgia for it? What were your favorite parts from this game? What are some of the things you loved about it? What are some of your favorite moments of either jank or just things that you found really funny? Because this game is actually a really hilarious game. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that junk, and I will see you guys in the next one.